Good afternoon, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Another J20 has just been dropped off. This one is not in for a full rebuild, but it does have some problems. The customer brought it in just for me to have a listen to. When you rotate the attenuator control, it's got power scaling on it. The amp makes some very fun and interesting noises. Brought it in for me to listen to see what I thought, and to maybe make a plan. He was just passing through on the way to do something else. He said, could I drop it in and we have a listen? No problem. Got this thing on the bench, and we were just having a mess around with it, listening to what it was doing, trying the controls out. And I'll show you that problem, but we did find something else, which I'll show you in a minute. But I'll just stick a microphone in front of the speaker so you can hear too what this thing does. Right, so amp is on. Tone control is at 0 and both volumes are at 0. There is nothing plugged in to the amplifier. This one, by the way, has a Celestian Blue fitted at a pair of 6L6s. I think this particular amp has been on the channel before. Attenuator is currently out of circuit, so it's in full power mode. And we'll bring up the tone control. And the volumes. Quite a bit of hum there, quite a bit of hiss, but not unusual for one of these. But if I bring the attenuator circuit the control into circuit, you can hear we get quite a lot of rustling and crackling, changes in hum level, something not quite going on there. It doesn't stop the amp working, so he has got gigs coming up, so we're not going to do anything with that for the time being, other than clean the control. Now, he has mentioned that he's not particularly attached to the amp, so he might sell it, so he's not looking at doing any long-term investment work into it, such as a full rebuild. So it's more of a case of just keep this thing going as it is, although it is quite noisy. But what we did find, and this is what I want to show you, is this. Hopefully you can see that clearly, but I was just looking at the preamp valves, and I noticed that this particular one isn't fully seated in the socket. I'm hoping that's coming across on camera, not quite. Perhaps if I rotate slightly, you might be able to get a better view of what's going on. I did notice V1, it wasn't sitting properly in the socket. The pins are probably, I'd say 3 to 4 millimeters off being fully seated, so it's sticking out. So if I just remove that valve carefully from the socket, it is a Electro-Harmonix 12AY7. The pins aren't particularly bent in any way. We'll put that to one side. Hopefully you can now see what I can see, which is that pin 4, sorry, not pin 4, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pin 6, which is a high voltage pin, is protruding from this side of the socket. Do you see? And if I come and have a look from this side, it does look strange. So I think we've had a socket failure. If I grab a new one from my stash, I can show you what they're meant to look like, so you can get a comparison. You can see some of those pins look recessed from far in, but that pin there, pin 6, is definitely sticking out. Now, that's a high voltage pin, right? So there's high voltage on that. It's powering up that triode. So you need to make sure you've got good connection there. So we have got a failed socket. I am going to swap this out for the customer. Hopefully that fixes one issue, because if a valve isn't seated properly in its socket, you do get noise issues, you do get problems, which often sound worse than they truly are. So it's always worth checking that these things are done. I think whilst we're here, we'll check V2 as well. Well, that one is properly seated, but if I just remove it from the amp, that's really well seated in there. That was quite stiff. Those pins do look better than those ones. So I'm going to swap out V1. I think that's a good thing to do. The customer's going to be coming back past in a couple of hours, so I'm going to try and do it quickly for him then. I can't guarantee it's going to fix all the problems with the amp. Of course it's not. That's not the way these things work. But we will at least make sure that V1, which is the most sensitive valve to noise and problems, is going to be seated properly in a brand new socket. Clean the pins. We'll stick the valve on the tester as well. And then at least the customer can take the amp away and let me know over a period of time whether there's an improvement or not. Good afternoon, everyone. Q&A time, as is always the case this time of the week. A couple of little updates for you. Bit of admin. Slight delay on t-shirt orders. So I think it's the green colour, which there's an extra couple of days delay for. So if you wanted black or navy, you're all good. But if you wanted green, you just have to wait a couple of extra days before they can ship them. They are printed on demand. So if you're interested in buying a t-shirt, please do. It does really help support the channel and me and all the other bits and pieces. But the green colour, as far as I'm aware, there is an extra, I think it's just 2 days on top of the usual delivery time for them to turn that around. So speaking of t-shirts, there is going to be a new design coming. A lot of you have asked for just a very simple black or whatever colour t-shirt you want with the circular riff logo on the left chest. Yeah, so they are coming soon. Look out for those. I'll let you all know when they are available to order. Weather update, it's cold, but it is dry. The clocks have now gone back, which means I no longer get to leave work in the evening or during the daylight. It is now dark for the next, well, it's going to be probably March before I get to leave work in daylight again, which it's really depressing, isn't it? It really, it's just one of those, you know, because we've put the clocks back an hour today, filming this on Monday, a day after the clocks went back. The day is really dragging because I feel like it's further ahead in the day than it actually is. 10 to 3 in the afternoon now. Like, my body still thinks it's 10 to 4. So yeah, I feel like I'm in a weird limbo mode. But yeah, that's that. Anyway, let's crack on with the Q&A. And we'll start with Michael March, who said, who would pay for a repair on a valve state? Even on a good day, they sound like, Well, Michael, the good thing about tone and sound is that it's entirely or mainly subjective. What one person thinks sounds amazing, someone else might not enjoy that. There are things that are objective about it as well. So you could say that amp is more fizzy or fizzier than that one. That one's got more bass than that one. the top end on that amp is particularly sharp. That, you know, that's an objective thing. And then you can say whether you like it or not. So as to answer your question, who would pay for a repair of a valve state? Well, the owner, because he really likes that amp. And so do many, many people. So I'm not entirely sure your comment is either helpful or warranted. But, you know, you're all welcome here. But I actually thought that valve state sounded great once it was working, of course. Yeah. The reverb, I wasn't a fan of the reverb, so I'll give you that. But overall, it wasn't a bad sounding amp. And it's been used by some very famous guitar players very effectively. Joe6v674 says, is there a schematic for the Ansley amp? Yes, there is. It's in my technical file. Thanks. Moving on. Right. Hopefully you can see. Let's just get all of this unsoldered. And swapped out. This, I forgot to say, it's a J20H, this one, so it's got the bigger transformers in. Oh. Question on the Friedman repair. Very popular, those videos, by the way, so thank you. A lot of you tuned in, a lot of you asked questions. PGM LML says, if tapped the slope resistor with a guitar plugged, I believe you would have found the problem in 5 minutes. Also, I think a simple flow of solder would have fixed it. God work either way. Well, for those that actually watched and paid attention to the video, you'll see that the tap test was performed quite extensively with the signal running through the amplifier. So, and unfortunately, it was inconclusive. It did not give me an indication either way. It was only when I had gone back to it and was probing around with my oscilloscope probe and I applied pressure to the resistor in a very particular way that the fault then revealed itself. He says, I also think a simple flow of solder would have fixed it. No, that's not the case. The resistor itself does have an internal short. So it was a faulty resistor. It was not the pad or the trace. So here's our socket in question. Standard Belton socket. That's the pin. (9876). Yeah. Won't actually. There you go. Got it through now. So I could spend time fully cleaning off all the solder, cleaning the pins, retensioning them, putting back in. But for the cost of a new socket versus the labour time to do that, it's simply not worth it. We'll just put, see, old one on the left, new one on the right. We'll just put a new one in. I don't think that's a genuine Belton. See, genuine Beltons have got the B logo there. You can see there's a slight difference. I think these are knockoff Beltons. Yeah, you can see the moulding's different. Not even a genuine Belton. It's close. That's naughty. Anyway, let's get it in, get it installed, amp fired back up. Regular commenter RFO says, interesting approach using a distorted signal. I didn't use the distorted signal. That was just the signal generated inside the amp for that second channel, which is pretty high gain. He says, stupid question. Never a stupid question. A simple 1 kHz input you normally use to check circuits isn't going to give you a lot to work on with a tone stack, as that's trying to shape different frequencies. So what do you normally do to test/calibrate tone shaping circuits? Stupid, because I'm clearly missing something obvious. No, you're absolutely right, because as we all know, an oscilloscope allows you to view the sine wave in the time domain. So left to right on the screen, whichever way this is time as it progresses. And the reason we can see some effect of the tone stack on that is because it is adding or taking away certain frequencies that then affect the shape of the sine wave. Do you remember how it's best to think of a sine wave not as an up and down, but as a coil, like a spring? So if you look at a spring side on, that's your sine wave. And if you look at it head on, we take a cross section of that. We use a device called a spectrum analyzer, which takes a cross section, looks at it head on, and then separates it out into what we call the frequency domain. And therefore we can use that to check the function and calibration, all those things of something like a tone stack. You can also use a sweep generator to get a frequency response graph on some oscilloscopes. I prefer to use a spectrum analyzer. Other people prefer to use it that. They're equally as valid. It's different tools for the same job. RFO also says, I think what the experience shows me is the value of working through something component by component. It's true in a lot of industry, to be fair. There are, and I know I talk about cars a lot, but in the automotive industry, diagnosis is often an art form that's not respected by many mechanics, I think it's fair to say, and many owners as well, in that they just fire the parts cannon, as they like to say, and just replace a part and hoping that they hit the target and something fixes it, rather than doing a proper diagnostic and going through that procedure and learning and understanding. And and everyone's guilty of it. We've all done it in the past and hoped. In fact, I did on that Freeman itself. Do you remember the 2 silver mica caps I replaced just out of the abundance of caution? And I thought I'd fixed it, but the problem then reappeared. Now, if I'd sent the customer out the door without doing the further testing, sent the amp out the door to the customer, we would have had a comeback, which never looks good. So yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah, go through the process, try and understand it. You learn so much, and this was the point I was trying to make in the other video. You advance your own learning and understanding so much more if you take the time to go through it and dig that one level deeper. So don't give up, keep trying, get your data sets, understand it, go from there. Okay, socket in. Let's see if our 12AY7 seats properly in that socket. Yes, it does, and you can see through the window it is fully seated. Excellent. Right, we'll just fire this up on the test bench and install it back in the cab. It's currently doing, it's J20H by the way, and we can get into 8 ohms, 13.5 volts, puts us about 22 watts. Okay, fair enough. The attenuator does work. See that very strange flickering on the scope. There you go, look at that. Look at it bouncing around. Anyway, Up and running, customer can take it and make a decision about what he wants to do. I've cleaned the pot and it made no difference, but for the time limit we've got today, we're not going to get much further with this. J20 V1 socket replacement done. Rob, I believe it's Rob, says, "Hi Chris, can you explain about bench testing an amp using test tone and a dummy load? I have tried to test several of my amps, but I think I'm overloading them when entering a 2 to 300 millivolt 1 kilohertz signal. I don't get a clean output signal. I was thinking it would simulate a guitar pickup. Your signal's far too hot, mate. 100 to 150 millivolt RMS sine wave is the maximum. The test standard that I use is 150, but you can use 100. Some pure sine wave generators can only put out a maximum of 100, but I do 150. And that's just so I can get, if you have consistent test conditions, you can then publish your consistent results, right? Anyway, plus I was using a THD hot plate as a dummy load, but I tested it, and even though the unit is 8 ohms, when I set it to load, it's actually measuring a few hundred kilo ohms. How are you measuring the impedance, mate? If you're measuring with a multimeter, that's measuring DC resistance and not impedance, which of course changes with frequency. So he says, I guess I need a different dummy load. Get yourself, I'm guessing the hot plate is also a reactive load, right? Rather than a resistive load. I should have looked it up before answering this question, so feel free to correct me in the comments. But just get yourself, you can build yourself a load just out of power resistors, heatsink resistors. I mean, I would network a load together. Really, you want 500 watts, I would say. Just give yourself that thermal headroom. In fact, the one I've got over there, my 2 ohm and my 16 ohm one, is only rated for 200 watts. So you probably get away with that. Just for brief testing, not for long soak testing. That's why, I've got my 1 kilowatt dummy load on the wall. But that's all you need. So I would say your signal is too strong going in, and you need a fixed load on your output. And try and get it bang on 8 ohms. All right. Emilio Nava, regular commenter, says, it seems like that Mr. Customer wanted a royalty treat. He wanted to be treated like a king, yeah. I have a culturally serious question, he says. If you were called to make an amp for the royal family and they need it now, are you obligated by law to give them preference? No, I don't think I am. I don't have a royal warrant anyway, so I don't believe I would be. Would I? No. Everyone waits their turn. Nobody is special. Everyone gets everything in the order to which it is ordered. So, in fact, Ainsley, I'm building Ainsley a spare signature amp to take out on the road. And he's having to wait like everyone else. He doesn't get special treatment, so... if he doesn't, no one else does. You guys know that sometimes I like to browse the Facebook groups of amp builders, whether it's the professional groups or the hobbyist groups or just the enthusiasts, having fun building amps. And we always want to encourage people to build amps, and we want to encourage them to get better at it. It's a great community, and the more people who are out there building amps properly, safely, improving their understanding of everything is great. But I came across one last night. Now, as always, I'm not going to name and shame. It's not what it's about. But I thought we'd go through the 2 pictures that this guy posted on a Facebook group about he's done a 5E3 clone. And he's done it in a 2x10 cabinet, which gives a very different sound to your normal 5E3. Some people like it, some people don't. But it's different, and if that's your thing, great. The problem I've got is not the speaker configuration, the speaker choice, or anything like that. So I'll put the first picture on the screen now. And you can clearly see that you've got two Celestion 1030 speakers. And if we're looking at the chassis, he's got a 5-way 3, two 6v6s. He's labelled his sockets. He's got a 12AX7 in V2 and a 12AY7 in V1. No problem. Looking above internally to the chassis, he's mounted things, and I'm staring at this thing, and I'm thinking, there's something not quite right there. Is that circuit board? And he's used a turret board, as you can see. It's not mounted straight, it's wonky, but it's definitely screwed in. You can see there's a mounting screw there. Why is it wonky? Why has he done it like that? And if we look at the next picture, it gives a clearer shot of what's going on. And you can clearly see that he's mounted that board wonky in there. Now, you might say, well, he's just a beginner. Maybe he drilled his mounting points wrong, and that's fine. But when you read his description, he's done that on purpose, right? He said he did it on purpose to allow clearance of the turrets from the input jacks. Now, fair enough. I understand that, because even on a normal 5v3 build, clearance to the input jacks from eyelets can be quite close. And so what he's decided to do, rather than simply rotate the pots into a way that you can get clearance, he's done it this way. Which one just looks bizarre and isn't the correct solution to that problem. But also, if you have a look, he's got a mounting screw right there, and that's right next to a high voltage component there, that plate resistor. And I can't work that one out. And I've looked over this thing a couple of times. He's not given enough clearance from high voltage there. In fact, yeah, he hasn't. It's just bizarre. One, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look good, let's be honest. It looks terrible. Although, as far as homebrew kit builds go, I have seen a lot worse. I've seen a lot worse from professional builders. But looking at that, why wouldn't you just, one, use an eyelet board like everyone else? And if you are going to use a turret board, mount the turret board further towards the tube sockets or the valve sockets to give you the clearance, or just rotate the input jacks so they don't foul the turrets. Why would you do that? It's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. He's got his safety earth going to a transformer bolt, which is a no-no. Although it does look like it's a locking nut, so, you know, some mitigation there, but you couldn't sell that legally, at least not in the UK or the EU. Captive mains cable, and he appears to have wired the on-off switch and the fuse holder incorrectly. But we're not looking at that, we're just focusing really on that wonky board, the stuff you see on the internet. Amazing, absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, I thought you guys would enjoy that. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. As always, please give this video a thumbs up, or if your comments and questions down below, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't already. If you're feeling super generous, why not join the channel or buy a t-shirt, and I will catch you all at the next one. So how did racing go at the weekend? It was, for those who don't know, the 75th running of the 750 Motor Club's Burkitt Relay Race, which is a 6-hour race where you run as a team in a relay format. So one car goes out, does a certain number of laps, next car then goes out, does a certain number of laps, next cars. It's for teams between 3 and 6 cars and up to 6 drivers. So, you know, drivers can share cars and whatnot. And it's one of my favourite events of the year. We enter every year. And there were 67 teams this year, all running on the Silverstone Grand Prix layout. And as always with, you know, if you give people the opportunity to name their own teams, you're going to get some comedic names and everything in between. And so we had a go. We've had a go. Well, it was my 6th go at the Burkitt Relay. It's a handicap event, which means the faster teams are handicapped by giving the slower teams credit laps, you know, a head start, as it were. We've won our class for the past 3 years on the trot, and we went for our 4th win on the trot this year. They made it more difficult for us this year because not only did we get a lower number of credit laps than we normally get, although we still got a healthy amount, they decided that our slowest driver car combination had to complete a minimum number of laps. So he had to be on track for more than we planned for him to do. So we had to work that into our strategy as well. But thankfully, the racing gods did smile down on us once again, and I got that 4th class win on the trot. Now, even better than that, for 5.5 hours of the race, we were in the running to win the thing overall, which I'd never seen before. It was unbelievable. Every time I checked the live timing, our name was at the top of the screen. And it was bouncing up and down a little bit, depending on lap times and how many laps were being completed, how many credit lap people were getting, and all that kind of stuff. But we were so close to winning this thing overall. We didn't. We finished 6th in the end because we had to make an extra pit stop. So we dropped down a bit. And there was a final safety car, which there were 9 safety car periods in that race. 8 of them went our way, and the final one didn't. So, but anyway, we still won our class by over a lap, which is, yes, you know, what a great way. Because I love that. It's so difficult. And the best thing was I got to do one of my stints, the final stint, the sunset stint, which was a blue skies. It was amazing. On slick tyres, which are insane. The normal tyres I run are incredibly grippy semi-slicks, probably the fastest semi-slicks you can buy. But you put slicks on and it's just another level. The warm-up is very different, and it did shift the balance of my car slightly. But the amount of speed you can carry whilst trail braking into long radius corners, like Stowe and Brooklands, is unbelievable. It took me a couple of laps to really understand just how much and how fast you can push those tyres. So they've kind of ruined my semi-slicks for me, which I've got to put on for the next race. But I couldn't believe it. Anyway, we got that win. Brilliant. Absolutely love it. Big fan of that. So 4 class wins on the trot for our team now. 6 hours of racing in the cold. It was Arctic as well. It was so cold. I'd never seen track temps like it. But we did it. It was amazing. Car ran great. That gearbox is really struggling now. I need to get the other one in. But it's got one more race to do. 2 weeks' time, we're going back to North Wales, the island of Anglesey, for our final race of the year. Another 45-minute race at Anglesey. And that's the last race for the Mazda this year. And then it's having loads of work done. The engine's been picked up for the BMW, so that's gone off. He's going to prep the engine. He's got to do some little jobs on it. And then we're going to get the car over to him as well, for him to do all that for me over the winter. But yeah, a successful racing weekend again. I love it. I have such a good time. Just, yeah, it's fantastic. So yeah, lovely big trophy to go on my trophy shelf. I have said this already, and it sounds really big-headed, but I need to put another trophy shelf up because that's my 8th trophy this year. But there you go. First in Class D. Absolutely incredible. Big fan. Love a big trophy. Love a win. Love being the fastest. Yeah, and there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you at the next one.